So I heard you like anime. Welcome to another episode of What If Your Favorite Anime Character Was a Pokemon? Back by popular demand, as I did a video covering 10 anime characters as Pokemon, and today we've got 10 more, and I'm very excited because you guys in the comments were letting me know which characters you wanted to see from your favorite series, and I can confidently say the 10 characters I've chosen today are quite exhilarating. Most importantly, our budget for waifus went up, so we got more female anime characters in this list. And of course, there's still gonna be some characters missing from very popular series, some that are even my favorites that have still not made it onto a video. But I mean, there's just so much dang anime out there that actually it's not even a bad thing, that's just more content. So before we jump into it, make sure to hit that like button. And now, let's catch them all. See, I told you I'd make that a thing. And our first character to get Pokemonified today, that's not a word. It is Yusuke Urameshi from the popular 90s shonen manga Yu Yu Hakusho. Definitely one of my favorite shonen of all time. And Yusuke, the main character, is a huge part of that. So he's kind of a ruffian until one day he crossed paths with the infamous Truck-kun, the most unstoppable villain of anime. But instead of getting whisked away to another world, Yusuke actually got a second shot at life in exchange to become a spirit detective. Anyway, this allowed Yusuke to tap into his spirit energy, and that is what allows him to use so many of his signature moves, like the Spirit Gun, which is going to be our first attack here. And I've chosen Snipe Shot, which might be kind of weird because it's a water move, but when you look at the animation in-game, it is pretty much one-to-one. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if whoever came up with Inteleon or its signature move was heavily inspired by Yu Yu Hakusho, or maybe even watched it as a kid themselves. Next up, we've got Dazzling Gleam, which represents Yusuke's Spirit Shotgun, as in it has a wider radius that can hit a lot of opponents at once. So I chose Dazzling Gleam because it also hits all enemies on the opposing side of the field, and the animation kind of looks like a shotgun. And I guess this is a good time to explain what the numbers and symbols next to the attacks mean. Previously it was the PP, but I decided to change it into the move's power to kind of give you a better idea of how powerful this character would be in a Pokemon game. Anyway, his final ability was a little bit tricky to nail down as a single Pokemon move, so I decided to split it into two with Focus Blast and Focus Punch, and they represent the Spirit Wave, the technique that Genkai, Yusuke's old master, passed down to him, and he only ever really used it like once in the anime. And in that one time, he basically drew all of the spirit energy within him into his fist and then used it as a punch, which is why I made it Focus Punch. Technically, the explanation says it could be shot as a blast, so you could see Focus Blast as also being the Spirit Wave, or it could show how Yusuke's Spirit Gun got stronger as the series progressed, to the point where at the end, it was basically Spirit Blast or Spirit Cannon shots. Finally, we got Anger Point as his ability. As I mentioned earlier, he did have a bit of a rough upbringing, and Yusuke definitely developed a bit of a temper. And like pretty much every other shonen protagonist, the harder you beat him down, the tougher he'll get when he eventually gets back up. So I felt that Anger Point actually fit Yusuke the best out of all the characters we've had so far. Maybe someone like Vegeta too, but I mean, Yusuke, yeah, he's got some Vegeta vibes to me, and maybe that's why I always liked him. Oh wow, got dark quick. I wonder why that could be. That's right, our next character is Sailor Moon, probably the most famous and easily recognizable female anime character of all time. And this is a show I actually watched not very frequently, but I would see it every once in a while on Toonami. I mean, that's pretty much where I got all of my anime growing up. So Sailor Moon, whose real name is Usagi, is a human girl, but one day she gets magical powers from the moon. And that's why she is a fairy type, because a lot of attacks in Pokemon actually have moon in the name, and about 90% of those are actually fairy type moves. So there definitely seems to be some type of connection between fairy type and the moon, so it only made sense that Sailor Moon would be a fairy type. And as you can see, she's got a lot of fairy moves, starting off with Moon Blast, although I believe her most famous or most used ability, the Moon Healing Escalation, was technically a healing move more than damaging, so this slot could have also been Moonlight, another Pokemon move that has moon in the name, and it actually heals the user, but Sailor Moon usually heals demons or evil creatures of their evilness, so I thought Moonblast maybe fits a little bit better. I also considered giving her Moongeist Beam, which is Lunala's signature move, and the description for Moongeist Beam says it's a sinister ray. There's not really anything sinister about Sailor Moon, so I felt like that attack just didn't really fit her, despite literally having Moon in the name. So instead I went with something a little more wholesome with Disarming Voice, which is a reference to the fact that Usagi is kind of a crybaby. Her cry was actually powerful enough to be considered an attack called the Supersonic Waves, and it actually took out a horde of enemies. We also have Sparkly Swirl, which some of you may be wondering if that's actually a real Pokemon move, and it is one of the partner Eevee's exclusive moves in Pokemon Let's Go Eevee. And the animation is just so cute, and it basically looks like the animation of a Sailor Moon move. And almost all of them end in a pink confetti explosion of cuteness. Finally, we have Lunar Dance, which is a reference to Sailor Moon's most powerful move, the Silver Crystal. Or well, the Silver Crystal is not exactly a move, but it is a tool that she has, but barely ever uses, and that's because the Silver Crystal actually draws from the life energy of the user. But Lunar Dance is actually the signature move of Cresselia, the other legendary moon Pokemon, and it actually makes the user faint, healing one of your party members' HP completely. Not quite as OP as the Silver Crystal, which can essentially do anything, I think, that the user wishes for, but it does draw from Sailor Moon's life energy, so she could actually die from using it, which is why I thought Lunar Dance was a very fitting Pokemon move to represent that. Finally, we have her ability as Friend Guard, reduces damage done to allies, which is of course a reference to the Sailor Scouts, because Sailor Moon is nothing without her trusty friends at her side. Oh, you guys aren't ready for this next one though. Probably the most requested character from the last video. We got Monkey D. Luffy, the king of the pirates. Well, he wants to be. It's been like 20 years, Luffy. Why the heck are you still not the king? And the first thing you might notice is Luffy is a fighting and ground type, even though he doesn't actually have any ground moves. And this is, of course, because the one weakness of eating a devil fruit is, of course, losing your ability to swim. Yeah, if you've never seen One Piece, it's basically about pirates that can't touch water. So I'm not going to dive into some of Luffy's crazier abilities that he gets later on in the series, aside from this first one, Gear Up, being a reference to Luffy's Gear 2nd or Gear 3rd or 4th. Like I said, I'm not caught up and I don't really want to get spoiled even if I'm never going to watch it. But I do know that Luffy powers up with something called Gear, hence the move Gear Up being his first one. So next we've got his most basic attack, the Gum Gum Pistol, hence why I went with Bullet Punch, because, you know, pistols shoot bullets. It is probably Luffy's most used ability, maybe not most famous, that's coming up very soon, but you know, Gum Gum Pistol, Bullet Punch just seemed to fit perfectly. And next we've got Stockpile, which some of you might be a little confused about, because in the game, Stockpile doesn't really work without Spit Up or Swallow. I mean, it does raise your defenses every time you use it, which is basically what Luffy uses it for, since this represents the Gum Gum Balloon. And that is, of course, when Luffy puffs himself full of air, protecting himself from any sort of projectiles that don't pierce him, I guess. And finally, we've got Luffy's most notorious move, the Gum Gum Gatling Gun? I don't think gun's in the name of the move, but that just felt so natural to say. Anyway, it's gonna be close combat, of course, a barrage of punches being launched at the opponent. It was tough to settle on an ability for Luffy. Originally, I went with Long Reach, but we already had Jotaro in the last episode with that one, so instead I went with Guts, because that is definitely one thing that Luffy's got, and also a lot of people actually wanted me to include Guts from Berserk in this video, so this is as close as we're gonna get. Probably my favorite anime of 2020, Or was it 2019? You know, this year has been a mess. The point is, Dr. Stone is definitely one of my most loved recent anime to come out. And so we've got Senku as our next character, the main character of the show, who was frozen in time for over 1,000 years and kept himself alive by simply counting every single second for 3,000 years. If that's not a testament to his mind power, then I don't know what is. This man is one of the smartest anime characters out there, which is why most of his moves aren't actually damaging attacks. Instead, they're mainly status or support moves, starting off with Instruct, which is actually the signature move of Oranguru in the Pokemon games. And it basically just commands your ally Pokemon to attack for you, which is definitely what Senku prefers. You know, he surrounds himself with friends that are a little bit on the bulkier side because he's the brain, his friends are the brawn. When it comes to Minecraft survival, Senku is definitely a master of crafting, which is why his next move is the Crafty Shield, which in the Pokemon games protects your allies from being hit by status ailments, and in the anime basically represents his invention of medicine. Next we have Calm Mind, which raises the user's special attack and special defense in Pokemon, and in Dr. Stone basically represents his sheer willpower and mind IQ big brainness. And finally we have Stored Power, which does damage based on how many stat raises you've got in Pokemon. So even though Senku doesn't have any psychic powers, he's just that much of a genius that he can come up with some way to hurt you if he really needs to, like when they came up with gunpowder and those blaster things, even though I think that was actually a fluke. Finally, we've got Analytic as his ability because he is a very analytical guy. Like I said, he kind of takes in all of the information around him before making a decision. So that ability just pretty self-explanatory. Aw, dude, someone's gonna have to hold me back for this one. This might just be my favorite anime character of all time right here. We got none other than Edward Elric, the Full Metal Alchemist. This is without a doubt one of my favorite stories ever. The two brothers, Ed and Al, against the world, against all the odds. And this isn't really spoilers, it's like the first episode. What kickstarts the whole series is their fatal mistake of trying to bring their mother back to life, which actually makes Ed end up losing his arm and leg, and his brother Al loses his whole body. Anyway, that's why I chose the ability Full Metal Body, though I did debate giving him Power of Alchemy instead, but I felt that showing off his different alchemy powers through the moves made more sense instead. So let's get into his moves, starting off with Smart Strike. Ed's most common use of alchemy is actually on his own body, or more specifically on his metal arm, where he makes a big metal spike appear to hit you with and slice and dice. But next up we have Nature Power, which I guess actually explains alchemy in general in the show. In the Pokemon games, Nature Power has a different effect depending on the nature around you. Say you're battling on the water, then Nature Power will turn into Hydro Pump. If you're at a volcano, it'll instead turn into Lava Plume, which is basically how alchemy works in the world of the show. Certain alchemists specialize in certain elements like fire or ice. I guess Ed would kind of specialize in earth actually. Most of the things that he does revolve around transmuting the ground or the walls around him into various shapes and weapons. We'll get a little more specific with the next move though, which is Flash Cannon, a steel type special move that does a little bit more damage than the Smart Strike, but it represents one of Ed's most famous, I guess, tools that he transmutes. And that is, of course, the giant cannon out of the ground. Ed does have quite the temper, especially when someone calls him little. So I guess he makes up for it with a big ol' cannon. For his ultimate move, I've gone with Final Gambit, and much like the other characters, this was definitely the hardest one to settle on, but it represents the Philosopher's Stone, or I guess more specifically, human transmutation. If you've seen the anime, you know the law of equivalent exchange. They literally show it to you in the intro of every single episode. Humankind cannot gain anything. without first giving something in return. And this applies even to the most taboo form of alchemy, human transmutation. One life for another. And that is Edward's final gambit. And on that note, we're gonna wrap up today's video. Originally, I wanted to include 10 anime characters, just like the first episode, but after editing the first 5 there, I realized how long it already was, so I'm gonna split it into 2 parts instead. Stay tuned, the next one should be out on Wednesday or Thursday at the latest, because it took me this long just to edit 5 characters. Hopefully I can speed through the next 5 a little bit quicker for you guys. But if you enjoyed, make sure to hit that like button and stay tuned because we got plenty more waifus coming up. Next episode, nothing but waifus. Maybe. Thank you for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and I will catch you all then.